Everybody, welcome. We're going to do a live Q&A today. It's 1 o'clock. I think I'm 1 minute late, so my apologies. I hope you can hear me well. I've done some testing to try to make sure everything's working properly. Hopefully you can hear me and see me and it's not too dark or too overexposed and whatnot. First of all, you should know that today is a very important day. Today is March 2nd. It is Texas Independence Day. So I'm coming to you wearing my Texas cufflinks. I'm a Texan at heart. I live in Virginia now. I've lived here a long time with my wonderful wife. But you can take the Texan out of Texas, but you can't do the other way around. I can't remember how that goes. But anyway, I love Texas. It's where a lot of our family is. So I have to pay a little homage to Texas Independence Day. Today, we're going to do a live Q&A. So hopefully the way this software works, I can see your questions. So if you want to leave a comment or a question, please put it in the chat, and I should be able to see it, and I can highlight questions or comments as we go along. I'm planning to just hang out here for a few minutes with you guys. So if you have questions, send them on in, and really want to do kind of an ask me anything. So as long as it's family friendly, nothing is out of bounds. I may not answer it, but feel free to ask it. I do have some questions I've picked from the YouTube channel, so we can go through and look at some important things that people have found over the past little while, some questions they want to ask. So let's get started with a live Q&A, Ask the Lawyer. The first question we have is this. Really more of a statement than a question. So I had a video I did on fighting trespassing charges, and one of the ways you can sometimes fight trespassing charges in Virginia is to do community service, to maybe have the case dismissed if they can actually prove you were in fact trespassing. And so Earl Philbrook commented, "Never do community service, not legal as far as I'm concerned." If you check out this video, Earl and I had a little discussion about this. At first, I thought his comment was a little bit out of left field, but his point was essentially that the ordering community service could be seen as violating labor laws. It's something I haven't researched, but it actually isn't crazy when you think about it, that ordering somebody to volunteer to work for free is essentially potentially an issue when we have like minimum wage laws and child labor laws and things like that. How can we go around ordering community service? So while Earl's comment at first took me off guard, it really is not it's not crazy. The difference that would be, though, that community service is normally done with a nonprofit charity. So if the judge ordered you to do community service for like the local car wash or the local mechanic or something like that, that probably would violate labor laws. But nonprofit charities are kind of in a little bit of a field of their own, as it were, because you can just volunteer for them anytime. And it's not a whole lot different, I would imagine, if the court's ordering it. Let's get on to something that people might be even more interested in. Let's go on to a big issue that's going to be happening in Virginia is with our legalization of marijuana that's kind of trucking down the road. I'm sure people may have questions about it. I have a video that I did on your marijuana questions. I did this, I guess, last year when the new laws changed, when they decriminalized marijuana. And so John asked, can they search your home for marijuana if they smell it? The answer is no. Actually, as of yesterday, the law changed. There was a new law they passed just recently for marijuana, where essentially the standards for searching cars even changed. Used to, they could search your vehicle for marijuana, if they stopped you and smelled marijuana. What we even had was some officers claiming that they were in traffic and they smelled the odor of marijuana in traffic, and so they pulled a car over because of that. And so that used to be a good reason to pull you over in Virginia, and then they could search your car for that. As of March 1st, they can't even search your car for marijuana. The reason they could have searched your car used to is because of essentially the vehicle exception to the Fourth Amendment. We're worried the vehicles are very mobile, and so by the time the police could get a search warrant to search the vehicle's long gone. And so there's what we call the vehicle exception to the Fourth Amendment. And so if they have probable cause that there's contraband in the vehicle, they could search for it. And so they could search for marijuana. However, that's the vehicle exception. It does not apply to your home. So if the police come to your door, they knock on the door and they say, hey, we smell marijuana in here, we're going to search, say, come back with a warrant and close the door. That's all you got to do. Now, they may very well go get a warrant and come back, and they may search for marijuana based on their warrant. However, they can't do so without a warrant. Your home is your castle. Your home is very protected. There are some exceptions where the police can search your home for different things without a warrant, such as sort of like an emergency situation where if they like hear screaming inside the house, they might be allowed to come in to try to rescue somebody who's in like imminent danger or something like that. But they can't just search based on the smell of marijuana. They can't come searching into your house without a warrant. So that's a simple answer to that. Let's see. Looks like we got a comment. So let's see. This is a great comment here. Let me see if I can highlight this on the screen. Hang on. I'm new to this system. So I got to undo this, and let's go to the comment. So here's the comment we have. Can they search your home if they see you growing marijuana in your window? This is a really good question. This goes back to what I was just saying about searching your home due to the smell of marijuana. So if they smell marijuana, can they come up and search? No, unless they get a warrant. But if, let's say, they see marijuana plants growing inside your window or see marijuana plants in your backyard or something like that, under the current law, they could not just search your home just based on seeing the plants. What they would have to do is go get a warrant. And if they got a warrant, then they probably could search your home for those plants for evidence of, manufacturing marijuana. But what's interesting there is hemp and marijuana actually look the same. They're indistinguishable to the human eye. Only can you tell them apart in a lab setting and actually analyzing them. And so it would actually maybe be an interesting argument of how can they even get a warrant just based on the appearance of plants that could very well be legal hemp that you're growing in your home. So that's a really good question, and I'm sure one that's going to be coming up, especially, farmers can farm a whole field full of hemp. It's very legal to do because it's grown for other purposes, and there's no THC in it, or the THC level is so low that it doesn't impair you, and so that's why it's considered a whole different class all by itself. So the answer, can they search your home if they see you growing marijuana in your window? They can't do it without a warrant, or if you let them in. That's the other thing we should talk about. When we're talking about your home, if the police come knocking on your door and say, we're the police, we want to search your house because of X, Y, and Z. If you say, okay, you've just consented. Consent throws everything else out. If the police have actual consent from somebody who's apparently, the law is kind of fuzzy, but basically if they have actual consent from somebody who's essentially in control of the premises, they can search all day long. So that's the issue here. Is that if you give them consent, you're toast. So you never want to give the police consent to search your home or your vehicle, because then it doesn't matter what probable cause they had or what warrant they had or didn't have. Consent gives them what they need. All right, we got another live question here from Leonard. When are you going to put all this advice into action and drive through a DUI? It's a great question, Leonard, and the answer is hopefully never. And I wonder if maybe Leonard means a DUI checkpoint. I've done several videos about DUI checkpoints, about how to handle yourself if you come across a DUI checkpoint, where any of us could come across a checkpoint. You're just on the wrong street at the wrong time. And if I ever do, I'm going to have the video camera rolling, that's for sure. And I'm going to handle myself the way I recommend everybody does, by simply not saying a word. So I'm not going to go out looking for a checkpoint to roll through, but if I ever do come across one where I have to roll through one, I will certainly put my own advice into action. The only time I've thankfully been at the wrong end of the police investigation was one time I was actually rear-ended while driving, and I was a driver, and literally I sat there thinking before the police came about what am I going to say to the police, if anything. And I sat there analyzing, what happened, what I did, what the other cars around us did, and I had some time to do so before I could decided if I was going to talk at all to the police. And I do this every day for a living. And once I determined that I had done nothing wrong in this situation, I decided that it would be fine for me to talk to the police once they arrived and explain what happened. I also knew we had no contraband, no drugs, no anything like that in the car, because we keep our cars very immaculately cleaned. And of course, we don't do any of that stuff anyway. So I knew it would be perfectly safe to talk to the police. But if it was a situation where the police were there, really quickly, and I hadn't had time to think about it, and I was involved in even just a fender bender or vehicle accident, I would not be explaining things to them. I would say, officer, I'm not going to talk to you right now. I need a minute to collect my thoughts. Maybe something like that would be a very fine response of, I need a minute to collect my thoughts, or simply, I don't want to talk to you, and let them figure it out. All right. We got all sorts of other questions coming in, so this is good. Leonard clarified, yes, I do mean checkpoint. So that's, we'll come back to some other comments from Leonard here in a minute. I wonder if there's a way to mark these answered. No, there's not. Okay. If I miss your comment, I'm sorry. We're getting some good comments, and I'm trying to keep up with everybody. All right. Glenn Hudson says, will you lose benefits like Medicaid or EBT or SS disability if you get a medical marijuana card in Virginia? Glenn, that's a really good question. And that's a question I'm going to make a note of. I'm going to be working 2 weeks from today. Subscribe, because 2 weeks from today, I'm going to put out a video of basically here's what to expect with legalization of marijuana in Virginia. They just passed a bill. The governor's expected to sign it. It's good. It's got lots of stuff in it. And I frankly haven't had a chance to study it all yet. But I release a video on this channel every 2 weeks on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. So subscribe, and I will be sure to put this question in that video, and I'll do my best to have an answer for you. I would be concerned, frankly, when you're talking federal benefits, because the federal versus state, it's all different stuff. And so currently marijuana is still illegal federally. So I would be very concerned about federal benefits if there was proof that you had that you were using marijuana. Now, your situation might be a little different if it's medical marijuana. I know in Maryland, for example, you can get medical marijuana cards and get marijuana from a dispensary. Actually, every case is different. Past cases don't indicate success. However, I had a case about a year ago where we beat a marijuana charge with a client who literally took the stand and explained to the judge that he was from Maryland. Here's how he got his medical marijuana card. He went to a doctor, paid a fee. He got the card. He went and purchased the marijuana from a dispensary in Maryland, and he was caught with it in Virginia. And the judge had to dismiss the case because it was legal even then because he had a medical marijuana card. But the issue you're asking about is about federal benefits, and it's definitely a good question. And I'm going to put that in my video 2 weeks from today. So be sure to subscribe, and you'll have some good information in a couple weeks. All right, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Until you start doing videos like this live, like we've done several like CLEs, like continuing education for attorneys that I've taught, and you sit there talking for an hour, you don't realize just how much energy and effort that takes and how much you need some water. Leonard says, great videos, very informative and entertaining. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Tell your friends, and everybody be sure to subscribe. Okay. Okay. So we got a question from Leslie. Isn't it against the law for people to pass on the right side on a 2-lane road? Example, Mine Road going to 1 lane. I got to think about what she's saying. So Mine Road is a road here in Spotsylvania County. So I'm just thinking about if people to pass on the right side. Well, no. So Virginia has some different traffic laws about how lanes work, essentially. And there is a statute that says, essentially, that slower traffic is supposed to keep right. But there's no law that actually prohibits people, in Virginia anyway, from passing using the right lane. The law just, it doesn't prohibit it. It just says slower traffic is supposed to keep right. So it's really vague and ambiguous. And this is the same reason why, there's no enforcement against what we call left lane cruisers on the interstate. I would imagine a lot of states are similar, that as long as you're going the speed limit in the left lane, the police can't really do anything about it because the speed limit is the limit. It's not like the speed you have to go. So even though people may want to go faster than you, they really can't force you out of the left lane, at least in Virginia, I would bet most states. So it's not against the law to pass in the right lane in Virginia. Some states may have different laws that say basically only the left lane is for passing, but Virginia doesn't have anything quite like that. Looks like that we've covered everything so far. So let me go back to, we got a couple of other questions that I'd pulled out. So here's a good question on dash cams. So I've had some recent videos we've done on dash cams about why you need one, the importance of having a dash cam. And so Deshaun Crew has been a great member of the channel. We appreciate you participating, Deshaun. This says, Andrew, this dash cam footage won't be allowed in the courthouse building to start with. The sheriff's at the door will say, take those electronic devices back to your car before entering here. Deshaun, I think it lives around south of Richmond, but I'm sure this issue could happen in many counties. And this is unfortunately a very major issue we have when you're pro se, which means when you're representing yourself. Essentially, most courthouses in Virginia, and I would imagine most courthouses everywhere, don't allow electronic devices by the general public. And it truly is a real issue that when you have evidence or even just notes or research or things like that on your electronic device, whether it's your computer or your phone, if you're representing yourself, you're not allowed to bring that device into the courthouse. And the bailiffs just simply won't let you in a lot of cases. So what you would have to do is you would have to go in for your case to be heard. And what I would recommend is you tell the bailiff in that courtroom, say, bailiff, I've got a phone in my car or up with a front desk. It's got evidence on it that I need for my case. And the bailiff will probably make an arrangement for you to be able to retrieve it when it's time. And if he doesn't, when your case is called in front of the judge, you would repeat that request. Tell the judge, say, Judge, I brought evidence that's on my phone. They wouldn't let me bring it in. How can we get it in here for you to see my evidence? I've never seen someone actually ask that question who was denied, at least in the courts where I'm at. I'm not saying it's never happened, but I've never seen it. Generally, if you have actual evidence on your phone that's there at the courthouse, generally they'll find a way to get it in for you, even if it means letting you go to your car and coming back to get it. So if you have electronic evidence or video or something, bring it with you to the courthouse and at least leave it in the car, and they'll find a way to get it in. But it is a very big disadvantage, unfortunately, when you're representing yourself. All right, we have another question. So Winter Parker commented, I did 86 on the 65. What do you think my punishment is in Hampton? Unfortunately, this is a good time to explain that these cases for reckless driving by speed, they differ so much based upon the local county or city or judge, that's handling the case. In some counties, 21 over is seen as pretty egregious. In Virginia, it seems crazy, but they treat it pretty seriously. And in some counties, 21 over is seen as not a big deal. And so this is where you really need to have a local traffic attorney handling your case, or at least talk to them. You don't have to hire them, but talk to 2 or 3 local attorneys. Local means somebody whose office is in that county or in one of the counties very close by within half an hour or so. Local does not mean talking to an attorney whose office is across the state and they've got attorneys everywhere. Usually that's probably not going to be the best attorney for you, in my opinion. Because you want to know who your attorney is, and you want to have a good relationship with them and make sure that person, that attorney you're hiring is going to be a good attorney for you. Okay, looks like we got some more comments. Let me switch back over here. Oh, sorry. All right, so Eric Krim says, ask for leave of court. If it's a court of record, shouldn't the clerk allow them? I guess this question is from a few minutes ago when we were talking about bringing in electronic devices. It's a really good question, and that's what I'm saying. Yes. So in Virginia, it's a little bit complicated. Most of your traffic offenses and minor misdemeanors are all prosecuted in what's called the general district court or the juvenile court if you're a juvenile. These are courts not of record. So it's a very basic, very basic court where they dispose of a lot of the small time cases. But still, even in that court, you have the right to present evidence in your defense. And if your evidence is on a video on an electronic device, you should be allowed some way to bring it in. And that's why, frankly, what you probably should do is maybe a week ahead of time, maybe talk to the clerk, maybe call the clerk's office, say, I've got a phone, I've got evidence on there, how do we want to handle this? And they should be able to make some kind of arrangement. We have another good comment here from Ben Johnson. Easy fix is to remove the evidence from your phone and put it on a thumb drive. That's really good advice. And it's actually a really good point to maybe have a couple of copies. So you have it on your phone, have it on a thumb drive. Most courthouses would probably let you bring in a thumb drive. The only problem with that is a lot of courtrooms don't have a computer set up to play a thumb drive. It really depends. It really depends upon the courtroom. These days, a lot of them do have a computer. I'm here in Virginia. It's relatively rural where we are. So a lot of the courtrooms do actually have a computer set up so you can pop in a disk or a thumb drive, but it's still not every courtroom. But it's not a bad idea to have a couple of copies so you could try to play it on something. All right. And then we have, okay. So Dan asks, can you explain what tests I can refuse and what tests I must comply with when pulled over in the state of Virginia? It's a really great question, and it's one that is very confusing for a lot of people. So let's go into this. You can refuse in Virginia any roadside test, any test to be performed on the side of the road or in the parking lot or in the front of your house or whatever. You can refuse those tests. You cannot refuse, without facing additional charges, you cannot refuse tests that are performed, the actual breath test is performed at the police station, or a blood draw that would be normally done at the hospital. I actually think some counties in Virginia are now doing them at the jail. They have a nurse there who can do it. But that's the rule of thumb. And essentially the way to remember that is if you're arrested, once you're arrested and cuffed, that changes the whole game. Before the arrest, everything is considered voluntary. So let's say you're pulled over for a stoplight, some minor thing, speeding or a stoplight. And the police come up to you and say, Mr. Felucci, do you mind doing some tests to make sure you're okay to drive? Well, that is 100% a voluntary choice. And the way they ask it is usually voluntary. Sometimes they'll threaten you and say, if you don't do my test, you're going to go to jail. But the tests on the side of the road, they're all considered voluntary. If you agree to do them, they're going to come into evidence against you. If you don't agree to do them, that is no harm and no foul. They just don't have that extra evidence to use against you. Since they're voluntary, you can refuse them. So the big common misconception is, but you have to take the breathalyzer, don't you? Well, it depends upon what breathalyzer you're talking about. And this is where you have to remember the difference between tests on the side of the road, pre-arrest, versus tests at the police station. There's two essential breathalyzers, essentially, we're using that term. There's what's called the preliminary breath test or portable breathalyzer, whatever you want to call it. It's a little handheld thing that the police have. I've got one here in the office, but it's not handy, so I'm not going to run and get it. It's a little handheld thing with a little white straw usually. They stick it in your face and say, blow into this like you're blowing up a balloon. And that's before you've been arrested. You're standing there with your hands free usually. But that test can always be refused, that handheld test. You never have to take that test in Virginia. So it's the handheld test. Remember, you can always refuse that. You can always refuse the 9-step walk and turn test, the one-leg stand, the ABCs, following the pen with your eyeballs. You can refuse all that stuff. And you can just say, nope, I don't want to do those tests. Or just remain silent. Don't say anything, and they'll give up after a little while. It depends on how tenacious they are. Okay. Once you're arrested, though, then depending on the evidence they have, the police will have you either go to the police station to do another breathalyzer. It's called the intoxilyzer, ECIR2. But people just call it the breathalyzer. That machine, it's like a old looking printer. It's like a big old dot matrix printer. And it's got a big long black tube, and it's sitting on a desk on a counter in the breath room. Okay, that's a big machine. It's not held in the hand. It's a big computer looking thing sitting on a desk. That's the machine that if you refuse that one, then you can get a refusal charge in Virginia. A refusal on the first offense is a civil violation. A refusal on a second offense is a criminal violation. It does require loss of your license either time. So that's the key thing. If the officer's sticking a handheld breath test in your hand or in your face, you can refuse that one all day long. If they're sitting you down in the breath room at the police station and there's this big printer looking thing with a big black tube sticking out of it, and they say you need to blow into this, that is the one you have to take. So that's the basic difference. Sorry, I got to get a sip of water here. Okay, excuse me. Another great question on that same line. What if they do the handheld breath test at the station? So that's where my distinction of roadside versus station it doesn't always work that way, because sometimes officers frankly aren't trained well and do things out of order. I've seen officers offer the preliminary breath test to a defendant after they've been arrested. And at that point, literally, it's no good, legally speaking. But anyway, if they offer the handheld breath test at the station, you can still refuse it. So that's one key thing to remember as far as breath tests go. You can literally always refuse the handheld breath test, and there's no punishments for that. It's not against the law to refuse the handheld one. It is against the law if they've got a valid arrest for you to refuse the non-handheld one. It's a big printer thing, and I don't have an image handy. I would put it up on the screen. But it's a big printer thing with a big black tube, but it's definitely not handheld. So you cannot refuse that, or you face a refusal. All right. Dan says, thank you. You're welcome. All right. Let's see. Anthony Gargo. I was driving. I think that means I was driving on a suspended license at the time we got pulled over. Hours in the passenger seat. What should I do? I'm not sure exactly what Anthony's question is, but Anthony, the best question is what you should do is to talk to a local attorney. First of all, wherever you are, whether it's Virginia or not, talk to an attorney who regularly practices in the county where you got the ticket. That's the most important thing. They can tell you what the law is. They can tell you what defenses you may have. Let's say you were caught driving on a suspended license. Then at least in Virginia, they got to have a good reason to pull you over in every state, because that's the Fourth Amendment. So they have a good reason to stop you. In Virginia, they have to prove your license, in fact, was suspended. And of course, you were, in fact, the driver. So if maybe they got the wrong guy, you may have a defense there. And of course, they have to prove in Virginia that you knew the license was suspended. You have to have notice of the suspension. So if you didn't know, it was something that was sent to you in the mail, maybe, you may have a strong defense. So that's definitely a situation where you want to talk to a local attorney about what defenses and issues there may be with the case. All right, Leslie has another question. How many unmarked police cars are there in Virginia? Do they have lights? I have seen them pull cars over. There are many unmarked police cars everywhere. Some of them have lights, some of them don't. Most of them have lights, like blue lights or blue and red lights, that you can't see from the outside. That's the point of them being unmarked. I don't know how many there are. There are lots. Every department, I think, has some, and it just kind of depends. So that's what I would say. Is there a lot? And be careful. In some areas, like Caroline County, they have several. I can't remember if they're Camaros or Chargers. I think they're Chargers, I guess, that are like not even like normal police colors. They just really, you wouldn't even notice them as a police car if you just saw them on the road. They're unmarked. They don't have light bars, and I think they have like a red one and a blue one and a white one, maybe if I remember right, down in Caroline. So you got to be careful. Stuff like that can sneak up and give you a ticket. Okay, looks like we're done with those questions. Let me move back to the, let's see. So this was a good response. I bleeped it out a little bit for make this family friendly. Bart replied to one of my videos on about talking to the police. Every day is shut the up Friday. It's good advice, frankly. Anytime you're facing police investigation for anything, you do not need to talk to them. And frankly, most people talk their way into handcuffs or at least charges of some kind. If the police are investigating you for an offense, it's because they probably have some reason to believe you did something, and maybe you did. And talking to them is just going to hurt you most of the time. So every day is shut the up Friday. And then the last one I had pulled out is from Pablo. Pablo, this is on a video I did about checkpoints. Do you have to get out of the car if they do not smell alcohol? It's a really good question, and it depends upon the context. Unfortunately, the police essentially can ask you out of the car anytime for any reason. Once they got you pulled over, they can ask you out of the car for officer safety purposes, which is almost just anything. And so that's the problem. If the police ask you to get out of the car, you basically should comply with that command to get out of the car. Now, if they start asking you to do tests, like, oh, step behind the car so you can do these tests for me, make sure you're okay to drive, that's when you absolutely can say, no, thanks. And then they may direct you to stand somewhere for a minute or whatever, do what they say, and then they may still arrest you. And obviously you don't resist arrest and fight about it later. You got to have a good reason to do what they do, but asking you to step out of the vehicle is one of those things that they can do for officer safety reasons. And so they really don't even need a reason to ask you. All right, folks, unless somebody has any quick questions to wrap it up, I think that's what we've got. So I really appreciate everybody stopping by. Remember to subscribe. Please do subscribe. I'm going to have another video, like I said, about marijuana coming out in 2 weeks about Virginia's new marijuana bill. And then after that, we're going to have one about essentially the corruption behind legalized marijuana. I think it'll be surprising for you to see. So be sure to subscribe, share this video with your friends, hit the like button wherever you're watching it. And I hope everybody stays safe and have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, everybody.